border of Israel in the north, and it has said that it is investigating. It says this was a picture that was from a few weeks ago. It's only now just been posted, and action will be taken.
Views the incident with utmost severity and emphasizes that the conduct of the soldier completely deviates from the values expected of its personnel. Following an initial review, the image in question was taken several weeks ago. The incident will be investigated and command measures will be taken against the soldier in accordance with the findings. The IDF respects freedom of religion and worship, as well as holy sites and religious symbols of all religions and communities. The IDF operates to address the terrorist infrastructure established by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and has no intention of harming civilian infrastructure, including religious buildings or religious symbols.
Well, there's plenty of evidence that that's actually not the case. Just a few weeks ago, we had this was another image posted onto social media which showed an IDF soldier taking a sledgehammer and smashing a statue of Jesus on the cross. Again, this was in that Christian town of Devil where this latest image has been posted from. And that sparked an international outcry. And in fact, Israel had to apologize, the foreign minister intervening in that over that case. Now, the IDF at the time also criticized the soldier in question and said that not only the soldier with the sledgehammer, but also the soldier who took the photograph were then put in a military brig for 30 days. Then, more recently, we've had other accusations. This is that the IDF demolished a convent in another town. This is a town of Yarun, also in southern Lebanon, also another Christian area. These accusations were originally denied by the IDF. Then they came out and said, oh yes, we had caused some damage to a building, but there were no signs to suggest that it was a religious building, and the reason we started to demolish it was because during the war we believed Hezbollah fired rockets from this building. Well, the Christian leaders, in fact, the superior of that convent has said there has been no Hezbollah base in the convent, and they have been distraught at those accusations. Now, the IDF then published an image which it said was the convent, and it showed the convent completely in its entirety and not demolished. But we then heard from local Christian leaders who said, actually, that image wasn't the convent, and there is destruction at the site. So, again, what we have here is just another example of IDF soldiers desecrating symbols of other religions. We see it here in Israel, in the West Bank, with Islamic images, and now we're seeing it with Christian symbols in southern Lebanon. And it begs the question, these are the images that are getting online. If that's the case, what's not being shown?
In my report, I do point out the fact that you were exposed to wood dust on a daily basis, and we know that wood can be treated with insecticides. I do believe that you meet the criteria.
The panel of experts will review the case, deciding if the girl's condition can be linked to her parents' pesticide exposure. In addition to birth defects, the fund also covers cognitive disorders and cancer.
Whether it's children or adults, when it comes to occupational diseases, we also see lymphomas among farmers. Personally, I've come to the conclusion that we almost have enough evidence to ban pesticides.
By creating a fund, the government effectively recognizes the danger.
The IDF. do not surrender necessary concessions, or if they or their satanic hench-dog allies try to act mischievously, we will deliver a harsh and regret-inducing response.
On Wednesday, the U.S. Central Command, which oversees operations in the Middle East, said its forces fired on an Iranian ship accused of violating the American blockade. Now, the vessel's rudder was reportedly struck without causing any casualties. Tehran has not confirmed the incident, but its Navy had previously said that safe transit through the Strait of Hormuz could be ensured if the threat of American military force was lifted.
You're facing an owner right now in Iran that has refused to submit. You seem optimistic as to maybe closer to a deal. What's different about this moment now than other moments where a deal has seemed close?
Well, why do you say they refused to submit? You don't know that. You don't know what's going on behind
U.S. ships a few days ago.
Yeah, no, a few days ago. It's a long time ago. You know, in the world of war, a few days ago. No, they want to make a deal badly, and we'll see if we get there. If we get there, they can't have nuclear weapons. You know, it's very simple.
You're facing an opponent right now in Iran that has refused to submit. You seem optimistic as to maybe closer to a deal. What's different about this moment now than in other moments where a deal has seemed close?
Well, why do you say they refused to submit? You don't know that. You don't know what's going on behind
U.S. ships a few days ago.
Yeah, no, a few days ago. It's a long time ago. You know, in the world of war, a few days ago. No, they want to make a deal badly, and we'll see if we get there. If we get there, they can't have nuclear weapons. You know, it's very simple.
Mr. President, you've had some recent back and forth with Pope Leo. I understand Secretary of State Marco Rubio is going to meet with the Pope tomorrow. What message do you hope he delivers today?
Well, I can tell you this, that as far as the Pope is concerned, it's very simple. Whether I make him happy or I don't make him happy, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And he seemed to be saying that they can. And I say they cannot. Because if that happened, the entire world would be hostage, and we're not going to let that happen. That's my only message. Would you guys, anybody like to say something? I mean, if you want.
We want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to build the biggest event in sports history. I also want to thank God to give us this beautiful day and give us the...
Here's a picture. I think a lot of people haven't seen this yet. I'll give you that. I think you'll probably be able to do okay with it.
Wow. Media's gonna go crazy.
Isn't that good? Not bad, right? Championship belt. Dana White was here last night. Did you know that he was here last night? He loves this guy. He loves all of them.
The opportunity to experience how it feels to be in our Oval Office. So it's going to be amazing, and we want to thank you for this opportunity. Thanks very much. And I never thought you will be so kind.
Well, I have a false image.
Yeah.
Would you guys, anybody like to say something? I mean, if you want.
We want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to build the biggest event in sports history. I also want to thank God to give us
that fuel prices have not increased at all. If you look at other countries, like the United States or European cities, fuel prices are extremely high and have become even more expensive. But here, thankfully, gasoline and other fuels have not gone up in price.
Unlike in Europe or the United States, where fuel prices increased due to the war and rising oil prices, we didn't see that happen here. We didn't feel any change. We had fuel cards before the war, and we still have them now. Whether it's due to responsible authorities or the country's oil resources, whatever the reason, prices has remained the same before and after the war.
Well, in the end, what we see here is a system that continues to function with a sense of stability on the surface, even amid broader regional tensions and global uncertainty. Energy markets abroad react sharply to geopolitical developments. Iran's domestic fuel structure remains largely steady, shaped by its production capacity and tiered pricing system. It's a reminder that energy, politics, and everyday life are deeply connected, but don't always move at the same pace, depending on the country. And
in the air when weed killers and fungicides were used here.
He made an offer to neighboring farmers to transition to sustainable farming. They all refused.
I'm not a green mayor, but I'm a mayor who cares about the environment. My goal is to protect everything around us. Homes, nearby oyster and mussel farms, a nature reserve, a bog where migratory birds have been spotted. We need a way to balance it all so that everyone can work in a healthy environment.
The scientific community is sounding the alarm. Victims and citizens are seeking answers, but authorities continue to ignore the warnings. Meanwhile, more children are born sick, with lives shattered before they've even begun.
And others.
To approximately 3,000 fighters. The enemy is using Western media to promote its propaganda. Their statements bear no resemblance to the real situation. The enemy is actively working with the support of news agencies, using online disinformation to destabilize relations with the government among the Malian population. I know that Mali's allies support the current government and condemn these terrorist actions and are conducting airstrikes against terrorist concentrations, which demonstrate the resolve of these states. Evidence of the involvement of foreign intelligence agencies, including Ukrainian ones, in preparing the militants' offensive will be presented in due course. For now, all the events of April 25th are currently being investigated by Malian security agencies.
In fact, they are aimed solely at restricting the right of the descendants of soldiers' liberators, as well as carrying residents and guests of the German capital to celebrate the anniversary of Nazism and honor the memory of those who fought the Great Patriotic War.
Germany has been banning Victory Day events for years, but many people refuse to comply. The Immortal Regimen, in which participants hold up photos of their ancestors who served in the Soviet ranks, have been held despite restrictions from German authorities.
Ukraine. So I expect the various vetoes on helping Ukraine to be lifted by the new Hungarian government. We've already had the loan, 90 billion. So, you know, if he unblocks help for Ukraine but goes to Russia, you know, Maybe we can forgive that.
Earlier.
Slovakia is a sovereign country, so its prime minister is free to decide which celebrations to attend. We could describe it as a disguised threat. There's a second point, though. I've read no announcement by the German authorities that representatives or citizens of the other victorious powers of the Second World War aren't allowed to display flags and other national symbols. So it's a matter of historical fact that the Soviet army has borne the brunt of the war against Germany and made the single most important contribution in defeating Nazi Germany. I can't see how it could be justified that if one wants to celebrate the Second World War and its outcome, the end of the Second World War, as a victory over Nazism, that the Soviet or Russian dimension cannot be ignored.
Well, let's look at the...
Petretro Porolin, where it comes amid an unprecedented low in relations with the US as President Donald Trump continues a series of disparaging attacks on the head of the Catholic Church. Well, we can get more on this and speak to Fast 24's international. Rubio's visit does at a time when tensions between the Vatican and Washington have been described as historic. Why so?
Well, there are two reasons why these tensions have been described as historic. Number one, it's the unprecedented, scathing or disparaging, as you would argue, have been levelled at the pontiff by Donald Trump. And it's also the fact that these weren't one-off flyaway comments. They've ultimately continued, even this week, Monday and Tuesday, we saw ultimately more scathing criticisms levelled at the pontiff. Let's remind our viewers, Inka, of where this all began. It began with Pope Leo then saying that he was ultimately against the US-Israeli war on Iran. That was followed up quite swiftly, you might say, by a rather lengthy Truth Social post from Donald Trump. I hope we can bring that up for you. Too long to go into all the details, but you get the gist of it there. Pope Leo should use more common sense. He should stop catering to the radical left. And Trump also spoke about him being weak and being terrible. You know, the superlatives were used there to describe the Pope's comments on foreign policy. That, of course, led to the pontiff responding and saying, well, look, ultimately, I have no interest in being embroiled in this kind of, verbal battle with the United States, the President of the United States. He says, however, I'm not fearful of the US administration. That, again, has gone on to further comments this week. Trump talking about the fact that the pontiff is ultimately okay with Iran having nuclear weapons. That, again, led to the pontiff saying, well, actually, we've always denounced. We don't think that that's the way forward in any sense of the term. It's worth noting that there's a broader context here as well. Not only is Washington, having a war of words with the Vatican, but, look at Europe, look at these strained transatlantic relations. Let's take Italy, where Marco Rubio is heading today, or has arrived, rather, I should say. She has been between a rock and a hard place. Meloni has long since Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, has been, in agreement with Donald Trump on many of his kind of foreign policies. She's had to, draw a line between her hardline Catholic voters who will want her to rebuke what Donald Trump has been saying about the Pope. So, and she has done that. So all of this, comes out to a broader context. Yes, it's tense between the Vatican and Washington. Not only, and Rubio will be there, hopefully, to try and smooth both the issue with the Vatican, but also the broader European picture is key here as well.
après l'avoir qualifié il y a 3 semaines de faible sur la criminalité et de nul en politique étrangère. Sur Truth Social, il s'est par ailleurs livré à une diatribe.
Worldwide. I think what is key here is that the Vatican has something to gain from this. They will want diplomacy between Washington and the Vatican to stay behind closed doors and to not be this public spat that ultimately brings, both the United States and the Vatican into disarray. It's not helpful. A final note here. This is, as far as Trump's administration is concerned, is a good way for Donald Trump to woo his Catholic voters back. A large number of Catholic voters participated in his re-election. That plus the fact that Pope Leo is particularly popular, at 1 year in the job in the United States. There won't be a papal visit in 2026 in the US. That's normal. Or even disagree on during this trip. Well, we've spoken quite a bit today about the areas that they don't agree on. We made reference, to Iran, where clearly the Vatican is not behind the United States, US-Israel war on Iran, that's for sure. There are also the issue of how immigrants are being treated in the United States. Not just immigrants, also, US-born citizens as well. This is really kind of spilling over these ICE policies, which have, created a great deal of controversy. AI is another which we expect to be discussed at the Vatican today. And let's not forget those massive cuts when it comes to USA. Those are all this vast terrain, if you will, for discord between the United States and the Vatican. What they might agree on, and we touched on it earlier, is Cuba, for 2 reasons. Now, we know that the United States is kind of upping the ante on its blockade there. It's, calling on Havana to find some kind of political solution. But it's worth saying that the United States has invested humanitarian aid into Cuba. So if they could find some middle ground there, that could be, something positive out of this meeting between Rubio and the Pope. Was a passenger on board the ship. Listen to what he has been saying.
Continues. We again kept eating our breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the dining room all together, and it was open buffet. We didn't wear any masks. We were not supposed to wear masks, and they conducted group activities. They are charging us around $10,000 per passengers. So I think these kind of amenities are needed. One doctor wasn't enough. He also got sick. And I think regulations for accepting passengers in the first place should have been stricter.
From Washington, President Donald Trump is confident of a swift end to the war, but it's unclear Iran will accept with the proposals featuring several red lines. Clear program, and Camille Gogoran has more.
US President Donald Trump's usual two-pronged approach to the war in Iran appeared intact on Wednesday. On the one hand, he was optimistic about a potential peace agreement.
They want to make a deal. We've had very good talks over the last 24 hours, and it's very possible that we'll make a deal. Yeah.
On the other hand, he continued to threaten Iran in a post on Truth Social.
If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be, sadly, at a much higher level and intensity than it was before.
American news outlet Axios reported on Wednesday that the White House had produced a one-page, 14-point memo on ending the war. Among other provisions, the deal would involve an Iranian moratorium on nuclear enrichment, the US agreeing to lift sanctions on Iran, and both sides lifting restrictions around transit through the Strait of Hormuz. While there is skepticism among some White House officials that even an initial deal will be reached, sources say this is the closest the parties have come to an agreement since the war began. But in a post on X, Iranian spokesperson Ebrahim Rezai dismissed the American demands as a wish list and stressed Iran was prepared should hostilities resume.
Iran its finger on the trigger and is ready. If they do not surrender and give the necessary concessions, the response will be harsh and regrettable.
Meanwhile, tensions in the Strait of Hormuz persist. On Wednesday, the US military said it had fired on and disabled the rudder of an oil tanker that had tried to break through Washington's blockade.
Studied and served at the Ryazan Airborne School. I'd love to tell you about him and many others, but as they say, that's a completely different story. I hope its time will come.
Каким должен быть командир? Командир должен быть всегда, во-первых, правильным, строгим и справедливым. Вот. Должен проявлять заботу о своем личном составе, думать о нем постоянно, понимать, что твой личный состав выполняет главную задачу. Поэтому и большее количество
British laws on reporting. So, yes, those polling stations opened here at 7 a.m. local time. They close at 10 p.m. local time. And we're an interesting borough where one of the parties that is said to be going to do well across the country is the Greens. And we will see, but we will be more at liberty to talk about that after 10 p.m. local time, and throughout the night we'll be getting results. But the bulk of results won't be till Friday lunchtime and then Friday afternoon, spilling into the weekend. But of course, you mentioned the devolved parliaments of Scotland and Wales. Labour seems very much in trouble there as well. Wales, where it looks like it's a two-horse race. But the point is, across all these elections, it looks like it's no longer a two-horse race between the Labour Party, the governing Labour Party, and the Conservatives. It looks like, actually, in Wales, it's going to be a two-horse race between Reform UK and Plaid Cymru. Plaid Cymru, who very much hopes that they will win there. In Scotland, we think it looks like the Scottish National Party will do well and will yet again win. A few months ago, it had been actually the Labour Party, but let's remember that there's this particular situation where you've got Anna Sawa, the Labour leader in Scotland, who actually called for Keir Starmer's resignation, which, as we know, didn't happen because nobody followed his call for it. Lots of rumours, of course. So we will see cost of living, education, housing, very much a preoccupation of families and of young people, and the knock-on effect of what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz on gas, on oil, on food, on very many products, very much in people's minds here today.
As they run forward, leading the dogs onto the boat. Oh wow, they walked in a line. It was so adorable.
I think it's going to be the biggest event we've ever had at the White House. I mean, the White House doesn't really do athletic events for the most part. And these are all the greatest champions in the world. They're the greatest fighters in the world. You can tell by looking at them. These are the greatest fighters in the world. How do you think if you went into heavy training? Do you think you'd be okay? It'd be a little tough. I think it's going to be the biggest event we've ever had at the White House. I mean, the White House doesn't really do athletic events for the most part. And these are all the greatest champions in the world. They're the greatest fighters in the world. You can tell by looking at them. These are the greatest fighters in the world. How do you think if you went
You're facing an opponent right now in Iran that has refused to submit. You seem optimistic now as you may be closer to a deal. What's different about this moment now than in other moments where a deal has seemed close?
Well, why do you say they refused to submit? You don't know that. You don't know what's going on behind
U.S. ships a few days ago.
Yeah, no, a few days ago. It's a long time ago. You know, in the world of war, a few days ago. No, they want to make a deal badly. And we'll see if we get there. If we get there, they can't have nuclear weapons. You know, it's very simple.
You're facing an opponent right now.
Mr. President, you've had some recent back and forth with Pope Leo. I understand Secretary of State Marco Rubio is going to meet with the Pope tomorrow. What message do you hope he delivers to the Holy Father?
Well, I can tell you this, that as far as the Pope is concerned, and it's very simple. Whether I make him happy or I don't make him happy, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And he seemed to be saying that they can. And I say they cannot. Because if that happened, the entire world would be hostage, and we're not going to let that happen. Would you guys, anybody like to say something? I mean, if you want.
We want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to build the biggest event in sports history. I also want to thank God to give us this beautiful day and to...
Beautiful. Here's a picture. I think a lot of people haven't seen this yet. I'll give you that. I think you'll probably be able to do okay with it.
Wow. The media's going to go crazy.
Isn't that good? Not bad, right? Championship belt. Dana White was here last night. Did you know that? He was here last night. He loves this guy. He loves all of them. Here's another one. This is another. They're going all the way out, all online. It's all people invited. Our country is invited to this. It's free. Amazing people, the most amazing people. Many of you have missed cherished moments, and you really have spent so much time taking care of the ones you love. You've missed holidays, birthday parties, graduations, or even a child's first words. Others have moved more times than anybody can even count. And I don't know if you love doing it or not, but you get very good at it. You have the way, you know the way to do it. But you do it all because you love America, you love our country. And this week, as we prepare to celebrate Mother's Day, we take this opportunity on behalf of all of us to say thank you very much for the incredible job. Amazing people. I love the name Melody because for a long time, you know, they have spell correct and word correct on these crazy machines that we use to put out truths, or they used to be called tweets. And every time I wrote Melania, it would correct to Melody. So I do things, and I work very fast, blah, 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 and I talk about it, and I say, and Melania is fantastic, and happy Mother's Day, Melania, our great First Lady, Melania, but it would spell correct and word correct to Melody, and sometimes I wouldn't proofread it, and I'd say, and I would get just absolute decimated. These people would decimate. They said he didn't know the name of his wife. He keeps calling her. And I said, what the hell is wrong with this machine? I didn't know about that little feature, but I got that corrected eventually. You know who corrected? The military. I said, come here, you got to correct this. You're killing me. I took more abuse. She's been called Melody a lot. Anyway, I had to explain it to you this way. I stood up here to explain it to you. For years, they'd grab a boat and they'd bring him in and they'd see a judge and they'd let him out, and the next day he's back in his country bringing more drugs in. Nothing worked. It was down, nothing. Get worse. Down 97%. And we're trying to figure who the 3% are, because we consider them to be maybe the bravest people anywhere in the world. You look at those boats, and you feel terribly, except for one thing. Those boats, 25,000 people die from just a couple of those boats. Think of it, from drugs, ruin families, ruin everything. And when you see that, you say, thank you very much. For years, Jennifer Hegseth. Jennifer? Hi, Jennifer. He's doing some job, I'll tell you. He's doing a job. You know, he stood up. He was the only one. He was standing up in the ballroom the other day in the event, the White House, they call it the White House dinner. You know, they were saying, can you use, well, when you use that term, I guess you probably can use it, but we had a little dinner the other night, and your husband was standing on the top of a table. Everyone else was under the table. So that's what we want of our Secretary of War, right? We want somebody, but he was standing on top of the table. Everyone else was under the damn table. Anyway, he's doing a fantastic job. In the case of Iran, we're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. We're not going to let that happen, and we won't let that happen. And so we're dealing with people that want to make a deal very much, and we'll see whether or not they can make a deal that's satisfactory to us. We have it very much under control. The blockade is unbelievable. The Navy's been incredible. The job they did, it's like a wall of steel. Nobody goes through. In particular, the Iranians, they're not getting anything one way or the other, so they're out of business. And we'll see whether or not they are agreeing. And if they don't agree, they'll end up agreeing shortly thereafter. So that's the way it is. And most importantly to her, she's done an incredible job as First Lady. And she's an incredible mom. She has a little boy who's quite tall. He's a little boy to us, but he's quite tall, right? And he's great, Baron, and she takes great care of him. And thank you. Great mom. And most importantly to her, she's done an incredible job as First Lady. And she's an incredible mom. She has a little boy who's quite tall. He's a little boy to us, but he's tall, right? And he's great, Baron, and she takes great care of him. And thank you. Great mom. And most important, there's nothing more important than military moms that I can tell you, because without you, I don't think it would be in this house. I don't think this house probably ever would have been built a long time ago. There's nothing more important than military moms that I can tell you, because without you, I don't think it would be in this house. I don't think this house probably ever would have been built a long time ago.
A mother is awestruck. Good afternoon.